Is this working? You guys hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, perfect. I'm Austin. I lead strategy and BD at Doodles. It's great to be here. Woo! Yes! There we go. Love the energy.
I'm Nick. Can you guys hear me? Cool. I'm Nick, or Cab online. I'm one of the co-founders of Claynosaurz. In a previous life, I was supervising animation for stuff like Jurassic or Paddington, and now I make these cute, colorful, quirky dinosaurs for a living, and it's been friggin' awesome.
Hey everybody, can you hear me? I guess so, all right. I'm Clément, I'm the co-founder of Imaginary Ones, and I come from Singapore, and we've been an NFT project for more than 3 years. So many ups and downs, and we see so many OGs here, so yeah, happy to be here, man. Thanks.
Hey everybody, my name is Adam. I run community and events at OpenSea. I also do a lot of other fun things there. Like sometimes I get pulled into BD stuff, sometimes I get pulled into this, into that. So it's very much like a multitasking thing, but I'm excited to chat with all these people today. It's gonna be a good panel.
We're going to kick it off with a question for the full group. So, this is my third NFT Paris, and a lot has changed in that time frame. We've seen, projects navigating like a post-royalties environment. We've seen the rise and fall of different marketplaces. We've seen, shifts in how projects are thinking about IP. What I'd love to go through and just get everyone's perspective on is how has the Web3 IP landscape changed in the past few years, and where do the best opportunities lie currently?
I'm so interested to hear Nick's take on this because we've talked about it a lot. We built Doodles on Ethereum, where we basically saw royalties go to zero overnight. This guy didn't have that problem on Solana.
We've had royalties off in the first couple months.
So they've been fine. But we really had to reinvent ourselves, and I think honestly it was a positive in some strange ways, right? When you put these constraints on a business, it really forces you to have to figure out, okay, what is a sustainable business model? Because at the end of the day, just having people trade your collectibles isn't sustainable. How do you get them to stay around? How do you get them to build affinity with the brand? And so we really leaned into the IP development overall, into our brand partnerships, into building a gamified collecting ecosystem on our product, the studio. But it is about, at the end of the day, building really strong community ties. And we've seen the ups and downs of every cycle. But at the end of the day, can you build something that's sticky, that's sustainable, that people want to come back to because they love the brand? If you put the technology to the side, do they feel like they have a real relationship with the IP? That's something that we're focused on.
Oh, man. Yeah, we're very similar in that when we built Claynosaurz, our whole ethos was we were going to build a brand that people can connect with. The technology honestly doesn't matter that much, or it shouldn't. And you gotta get people to really fall in love with the characters. And I think that where the meta is heading now is, when there was so much saturation of projects releasing the next big IP or stuff like that, really, it's do you have a product that normal consumers can understand? Because in the next couple of years, that's what's gonna matter. And that's what we built, and that's what we focus on. And like Austin is saying, being able to foster the right community alongside that journey is so important to us. And I think the other meta is abstraction of blockchain. Is we use the tech for all the opportunities that it gives us, and the way that we can connect with community members or even fans or consumers, and have that two-way channel or even reward loops. But really, the more you can abstract and remove friction, the more it's really about the brand and allowing the fandom experience to be at the forefront of everything you do. And I think that the opportunities are, and I know that you guys do this as well, is really blurring the lines between digital and physical. That's the biggest opportunity that we see with the blockchain tech that we're leveraging today.
Yep. Totally agree in what you're saying because, we've been around for 3 years, right? And we've seen so many ups and downs in the space, from royalties to no royalties to OpenSea to Blur, Magic Eden, etc. So I think I've always looked at it the whole entire space where if we are only surviving on royalties, it's never going to work because it's like a sunset industry. Once it's taken away, you are forced to survive as a brand on your own, right? So for imaginary ones, like we've been building quite a bit of things, like the plushie side, the merchandise side, the collaboration of Hugo Boss, Samsung, Transformers, etc. Right? So these are the ways to build the IP. I think that's a little bit more of a longevity play than trying to ride just the hype. I think when a project, before we launch it, it's always based on hype and everybody goes crazy about it. But after the mint is where you can actually see is there going to be true believers in the project? How long are they going to stay? Are they going to flip the NFTs or are they going to be the real believers in the long term? And if we're going to build something that has longevity, then people have to fall in love with the brands and the characters and the whole entire universe that we're building. So I look at the whole entire NFT as a start. It's like, okay, let's build an IP, but let's build a sustainable business, which is a little bit more important than just riding on the hype of technology or what marketplace are we at or what chain are we at. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. We are trying to build something special here because when you tie an IP to a blockchain, that is the special thing. It doesn't matter what chain is it going to be at, but the story that's being told in the chain, that's what's the fundamental of a brand. So, yeah.
Dude, I just want to say your website for normies is so cool.
Thank you so
it's so
much.
much fun.
Yeah, the characters that you guys do is freaking amazing, man, to be honest.
We got a full glaze off going right now. Someone say something nice about me.
Glaze
There's,
away,
so much
glaze
romance
away.
going on.
Yeah, IP's been fun. I got into this space around 2021-ish, and at the time there were all of these sort of people were minting apes or minting doodles, and you owned the token and you owned the IP of that token up to a certain amount. And there were, people were starting to build really compelling personal brands for the characters that they owned. And then there was this kind of swing away from that towards CC0 and really building IP sort of without permission, and anyone could do anything with it. Nouns is a great example. And so I think now we're sort of swinging back to this middle ground of both the projects and the communities sort of taking the IP and genuinely wanting to tell stories across multiple different surfaces. I mean, Doodles acquiring Golden Wolf is a great example of that, of wanting to tell richer stories in service of the community. I think Luca at Pudgy Penguins as well is just making GIFs and making memes and having that be what people see even outside of Web3 in Web2, and then they get exposure to Pudgies and they're able to sort of start on that path of oh, I've seen those penguins before. What is that? Oh, I see it at Walmart. Oh, I see it here. I see it there. So I think IP has taken some swings in a lot of different directions, but now we're sort of in this middle ground where the projects and the individual holders are sort of taking it back, and I'm seeing a lot of powerful stories being told and the IP breaking through. So I'm very excited by seeing that.
I love that. I love that. One thing that comes to mind during that conversation, back in early 2021 when we first launched NFT Now, we had a conversation with the late and great Virgil Abloh about how he thinks about, audience segments and customer segments. And the way that he groups it is the purists and the tourists in the space. And that's always kind of guided our mentality around how are we reaching between these two groups. And I'm sure, from your perspective, that's probably something that's also kind of top of mind in its own way. The purists in the space are the degens, right? It's the people on crypto Twitter. It's it's the people who are in the space, living, breathing, eating, sleeping it each and every day. And then the tourists are more the people who are that's the mainstream, that's the masses. That's how you break through to people who are not necessarily Web3 native, right? But maybe Web3 curious if it's presented the right way. So what I'm curious from each of you is there's a tension inherent in straddling that line, right? Because sometimes what you do to create a sustainable business and reach the masses outside of Web3 doesn't always directly translate to number go up for the degens and for the purists. So how do you kind of navigate that balance, and how do you each think about different market segments? Obviously, for the projects, that's about expanding the IP and getting outside the echo chamber. And for Emma, when it comes to OpenSea, I'm also curious about user base, how you think about appealing to people outside of that while also catering to that core.
It's a great Great question. I can see why you're moderating. Yeah, it's one that we've honestly struggled with a lot, right? Because we think about communities as a set of concentric circles. So starting in the middle, right, you have your evangelists, your diehards, your OGs, people that are like ride or die for the brand with a really, really high brand affinity. And then as you go out from the center, the brand affinity goes down, and that's where the tourists are that you talk about. And so another way to invert that would be a funnel. And ultimately, you want to be able to bring in those tourists and get them down funnel into your core community. And there are like two ways that you can really go about it. You can try to go really wide and excite a lot of people, grow that top of funnel as big as possible, and then try to bring them down. Or you start in the middle and you really super focus on your core community and you try to attract people from the inside out. We've done both. To varying degrees of success. A lot of our brand partnerships have been very, I would say, top of funnel in. So doing something with McDonald's or Adidas or G-Shock, we know that these are massive brands that have mainstream appeal that will let us kind of speak directly to culture and people come in that way. But we've also had products that are very much focused directly on Web3 core community that we ultimately know are for a much smaller addressable market. But if we can really appease those people and get them excited about the brand, we'll grow from the inside out. I would say it's a lot easier in a cheat code to go inside out than it is outside in, and we've kind of had to experiment with both to figure that out. It's just ultimately when you think about affinity and the ability to convert someone from a tourist to an evangelist, it's a really, really hard, expensive journey. Whereas if you focus with someone who's already an evangelist and you try to slowly get them to talk to their circle, who talks to their circle, that's a lot easier of a path to take. So we've experimented with both. Ultimately, I think you want to try to find products that can speak to a wide audience, but are serving your core community. I talk about internally a lot, like this idea that like Patagonia is a brand. They make climbing pants for climbers, but you'll see people at North Carolina in a fraternity wearing their pants or wearing their, cinchillas. They're not making them for the frat kids, I promise you. But because they've like super focused on their core community, they've been able to attract that cool factor to other people, and that's how we think about it as well.
Oh man, Austin, there's so much to unpack there.
Let's unpack it. Let's go.
Yeah. The whole spiel about working inside out makes so much sense, and it's the same conversation that we have. I'm sure you guys do too with the big media partners, because it is so much easier to build your core flywheel audience that can then help you expand the IP. So I'm mostly going to talk about content because I want to keep it short, which I never do, but. The way we look at content and sustainable expansion of IP is like, one, you gotta transcend past the echo chamber of Web3. Like, that is so important. And maybe price don't go up when you do that, but the meta right now is that is something that collectors should want, because the more demand and the more eyeballs there are on your brand, then the more that funnels back into the collectibles at some point in time, right? Like, that's just natural. And really what it comes down to is like, you gotta build good content. Like, you gotta tell the right stories, you gotta make people fall in love with the characters, avoid too many trends. So when we tackle social media, like sometimes we'll do dances, stuff like that, but for the most part, we try to do evergreen content that we can recycle everywhere, but that really speak to people, hyper relatable stuff that's shareable. But that initial demographic of, degens or your core audience is so important as a flywheel. When we did our first video organically on Instagram, we hit something like 7 million viewers, and we weren't sure if we were even going to hit a couple thousand. But that core audience that is the incentives are so aligned, really helped to flywheel the first video. We didn't boost anything; it was completely organic, and I think that's what it comes down to, is kind of like aligning those incentives. But for the brand, honestly, it's, build the right kind of content and something that speaks to normal people. Tell stories. I know that you mentioned storytelling, right? And that's so important. It's such a human thing to want to connect with characters, and that's what we do. And that's how we expand outwards. And ultimately, it's just great for the collectibles.
That's a pretty amazing answer. Yeah, I agree because like if you look at I would say DJs or like community members, they're actually pretty mixed in some ways because like the early investors or the early buyers of the NFTs are pretty much DJs, right? And if the price doesn't go up, like the things that you announce and the price doesn't go up, most of the time people deem it as like, oh, is it a bad marketing or people are just not reacting to what you're doing. But I think it takes a approach in terms of what we are building in terms of a brand. A lot of people are expecting to, just get to the final step within like a year. But when it comes to an IP building or character building, like Pokemon or whatsoever, these are legacy brands that's going to take like 10, 20 years, etc. to build. And that being said, right, it's through multiple aspects of like storytelling, character building in multi-mediums like, toys, games, films or whatsoever, right? So that is like the long-term approach. And that is for Imaginary Ones. We try to, partner with like brands like Hugo Boss, and to bring the masses into our brand, and that take over the stores, and people start to be exposed to the brand where we have like the clothes and everything was pretty sold out within a few days. That's pretty crazy, right? But to the DJs, the price didn't move. So does that actually equate to a successful campaign? In my opinion, like that itself is bringing the brand outwards into more liquidity into the whole entire space. Because if the TVL of like the crypto or like NFTs wise, the liquidity doesn't go up, means nobody's actually coming in. This whole entire space will be a left pocket to a right pocket, right? I'll be investing in this NFT, and then the next speculation, I'll be jumping to the next one. And that itself is never going to be sustainable as a whole. But I feel like, as a brand that, brands that has been around for the longest time, we have to focus on the IP, right? The things that we build, the merchandise, the big brands that we collab with, etc. These are going to be something that is for the longevity of the brand, and not the short-term gains where it's just what's the FP, else, I'm not going to support the brand, right? So these are things that I think as a founder, also as a creator itself, it's always a constant struggle. Like, will this announcement that we announce, would it be bullish if the price doesn't push? Versus like, but we know that it's actually good for the long-term brand. And that itself, I think in terms of a founder or whatsoever, right, is something that we should constantly focus versus try to chase the next hype constantly. Yep.
Yeah, so from the marketplace side, IP comes to life through curation on the site, on OpenSea. I'm sure many of you have visited OpenSea.io before, and by extension, discovery. And I think one of the tensions that we have at OpenSea is just given that we have so many different types of users, the experience that they want and expect to see from a site like ours varies significantly. So if you're a pro trader, most likely when you go to the homepage, you'll want to see like the top movers. That is a type of curation. Although if you are an artist or a collector, you would, maybe you don't agree with that. But if you're an artist or a collector, you might want to see like an up and coming artist, or you might want to see like a new collection that's just minted, or like a hot mint. And so we have a really unique and fun challenge that we're trying to address right now, which is how do we make the site and the experience for both curation and discovery better at the individual level. And there's multiple different ways of accomplishing that. And we're really excited about what we have coming out with our next product, OS2, which some of you might have heard about. But we're really starting to tackle some of those challenges with personalization as it relates to curation and discovery, so that each time you go to the site, there's something for you that interests you. And that's how we're tackling that.
Give us some alpha.
What's that? It's an alpha.
Yeah, the alpha is very soon. That is the alpha.
Hey, Matt, I want to say
Very, 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 very soon.
So,
We're talking minutes, hours.
When is it going to be, bro?
We got different soon.
Everybody
timelines.
relax. Everybody relax. Very, very, very soon.
yeah,
Trying to get Adam fired.
I also wanted to add that, like, and I know we spoke about this, and we were just talking to Zagabon about this too, is like, when you're building something where your North Star is like a 10 to 20 year build out, you really have to work on educating that core Degen audience that is so often focused on the now. You got to educate them on why that's important, why you need to sustainably expand outwards, why it's good for them and good for the whole community at large. But you also have to juggle, like, quite aggressively, the right kind of community management, the right incentive alignment. And for any of the founders here, I'm sure it's like it's it's been crazy for you guys as much as it's crazy for us. But it's a lot of work because you're going, in Web3, you're going at the speed of light all the time. You're trying to create an IP that will, at some point in time, be globally recognized, which, if that's all you were doing, would already be insane. But now you're doing event planning all over the world. You're doing community management. You're building out potentially gaming verticals, product verticals, like all this stuff at once. And it's definitely like the Wild West for IP rollout. But on the flip side, you are going super fast, and the advantage that you have while doing it alongside that core audience compared to like traditional is just insane.
Totally. Got a couple questions for each of you, going kind of into specifics. So Austin, obviously it's been an eventful past few years for Doodles. A lot of moves, everything from high-profile collaborations with Pharrell and leading, recording artists, to acquiring Golden Wolf, the animation studio. Leadership change, going from Julian to Scott, back to Scott, Burnt Toast, and also, just a forthcoming token on the horizon, or so it's said. Right, and so
you didn't hear that from me. I'm not getting. I don't know what he's talking about.
Spicy.
This is what everyone came here for.
So what I'm curious too is, like, with all of these moves, like how do they each of the ones you can speak to, how do they play into the IP strategy for Doodles? Obviously the big brand collabs like McDonald's as well, which you touched on, and how does that change going forward?
Think about that for a sec. Yeah, I think. If we're operating from first principles, like what we are as a company, what we are as individuals, we're storytellers at the end of the day. And what we're really trying to get back to is, with everything that we bring to market, our products, our experiences, anything that is consumer facing, honestly, even the process that we take internally, what is the perspective that we have on the world that we're trying to convey? And ultimately, how can the community participate in taking that to the finish line? So a lot of what you'll see moving forward is we have a particular idea or a take on the world around us, the market around us. We want to be able to distribute that in a place where we think it's going to have the biggest audience and impact. So that could be online, that could be IRL, it could be at an experience. And then we really feel that co-creation is at the core of it. So we can take it 80% of the way, and then we need the community to take it the last 20%. And we don't necessarily know what that outcome will always look like. To kind of like ground this in examples that you may be familiar with, one, I would say spiritually aligned company that we really take a lot of learnings from is this company Mischief. They're actually based out of New York. They've done probably a lot of activations that you're familiar with, even if you don't know the brand itself. Mischief did the big red boots, or the little big red boots, if you remember those, on TikTok and everywhere, that you saw all these celebrities wearing all over the place, and they looked absolutely ridiculous. One of the favorite activations that they've done that I really enjoyed was at Basel a few years ago. They set up an ATM with a leaderboard directly in one of the galleries. And so when you went, you would go and insert your debit card just like any other ATM machine, but it would put your balance on a leaderboard. And so and the idea obviously behind it is okay, we have an idea about wealth and opulence and wanting to project that back into the world. Where's the best place we could do that? Well, doing it at Art Basel, where you have all of these people that are in this high society and looking down on everyone, would be pretty interesting. So they had to go figure out how to work with an art gallery and actually get someone to put it into the actual event space. And the first day was a private showing, and so you had a lot of the high-to-do people who kind of knew what was going on, and so not a lot of people were interacting with it, and they're all right, we might be screwed here. I don't know if anyone's actually going to do it. And then it opened to the public the next day, and they ended up having a line around the block, so much so that they had to move it to another location because Basel was getting upset that it was blocking all of the other art. And what you would see happen is this relationship where the common people would go and they'd have $5 in their bank account, and everyone would scream and clap and shout. And then you'd have someone who thought they were winning, and they'd go and have $3 million and look back and hope to get some validation, and no one would clap. They'd turn on them, be so, and actually Diplo at one point went and posted, he's I think I won, and put it on his Instagram. That's just an example of how, okay, we have a story, we have a perspective. We want the audience to be able to take it over the finish line and really kind of hold up a mirror to society. So I think as we think about like the changes and how we iterate, it's making sure that like our creative storytelling has bite no matter what we do. It's not just doing a collaboration with the biggest brands in the world. They want to partner with us because of the community that we have, because of the perspective that we have. We want to be able to bring that back into the world. So you'll see more of that coming soon.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Austin. Nick, when I think of Claynosaurz, you know, what comes to mind is like very colorful content, plushies, and sort of like this interplay between like digital native, Web3 native content, and also real world physical products and the like. And so I'm curious, like how do each of those kind of channels play into your overall like IP strategy, and how do they kind of tie together?
Oh man, it's super important to us because what we want to build is an ecosystem that's just like hyper interconnected through all the different verticals. Of course, we've got like the product vertical. We're building out our gaming vertical right now with Gameloft, and we've got obviously community. Everybody has that, and we've got media coming up, and that'll be episodic. That'll be a TV show, but it'll leverage the heck out of like Web3 activations. And the ethos there is that you can leverage through that kind of, oh man, I hate to say phygital, but like physical, digital. I'm sorry, guys.
Just say it, bro.
Activation, you can leverage proof of attention. So you can have an ecosystem where, for example, let's say you've got like a kid that's watching the TV show. And has watched episodes 1 through 4, and there's a proof of attention protocol tied to that, so gamified content experience. They get rewarded these sort of badges or collector badges, and then those 4 badges are redeemable for like a limited edition, exclusive, free backpack. Just in time for like the school's back season, right? And they can flex that in the schoolyard. So those are the things we're starting to think of building. And you know, if you zoom out, you've got this ecosystem where everything exists on chain, is abstracted, but we've got protocols to leverage everybody's APIs and really read into proof of attention, but also be able to reward that fan base through collecting digitals. In a way that's really approachable. And then the parents also get rewarded because they're basically watching this stuff anyways because the kids are watching it. And so they'll have their own reward loops as well. But, you know, to try to answer this simply is like, it's so important. And I think, like we talked about in one of the first questions, is like the huge opportunity you have as a Web3 native IP is, of course, aligning incentives with your diehard audience and your community, but is also exploring what it means to have an ecosystem that's so interconnected through its digital and physical loops.
Absolutely. Clément, when we talk about it, when we think about like this cycle, a few of the big narratives around the cycle has been fungible tokens and also the development of the Solana ecosystem. And obviously you're situated right at the epicenter there with the bubble token and what you've built with imaginary ones. I'm curious, like, you know, what role does that token play in sort of like your overarching strategy for the project and specifically with a tied IP? And also like what, you know, building for like a Solana native kind of community that also like comes with the culture there. I'm curious your perspective in how you built for that.
Yeah, for sure. So Solana just tweeted about us yesterday, right? So
I saw that.
okay.
Welcome.
Yes, I like, you know, because like, okay, we started off as an NFT project, and like we feel like, you know, NFTs itself is going to be a limited amount of like collectors and everything. How do we actually expand the imaginary world beyond just like, you know, being a collector's NFTs, right? But so tokens is the way that we definitely fractionalize, and it becomes more liquid, where I think we can get a bigger community out there. So Bubbles itself has always been the case where we are building something that expands up the whole entire imaginary world, because when things become a little bit more liquid, we can do a lot more stuff, right? Like even like staking wise, or even the way we reward our community. You can't give one NFTs all the time to, you know, individuals, right? But you can give like a certain like $10 of tokens or whatsoever, right? So I think after our Bubbles, when we launched it, we actually started building the imaginary world, and that's where we actually introduced Carnival, and that's we partner with like, you know, Shiba Inu, OKX, etc., right? And that became like one of the the biggest like platform where everybody was like, a lot of brands are coming to us that they want to partner with us to build something special together. And after that, we started to realize there's a big problem because like when people win rewards, like, they spin the wheel, open a gashapon or whatever, they get some sort of tokens. Could it be bubbles, ETH or anything? But the gas fee is extremely high. So if I win like a $2 or $5 from a spin the wheel, nobody's gonna collect the prize because like the gas fee is really like $5. So people typically are angry, right? So we've been always like trying to find a next solution, and like we've been talking to the Soul team to see what's the best way to create like a multi-chain approach. And I mean, we're not gonna like ditch ERC as a whole. I mean, just to be clear here, right? We're gonna do a multi-chain approach, which is gonna be ETH and Soul as a whole, and the carnival and the products that we build, be it our kids content, the merchandise side and stuff like that we are gonna build is gonna be like, users have a choice if they want to stay in the ETH network or the Soul network. But I think Bubble itself is gonna change in terms of liquidity all the way to like a multi-chain approach. So there's gonna be LPs in maybe Radium or Jupiter, and of course with Uniswap. So I feel that could be the future of like how tokens is gonna move. Like if we are only looking at a single, like maybe ERC for example, that is something that's going to limit us a lot. And that's something that we've been facing because like when we want to build a certain feature, be it like, implementing microtransaction, etc., right? It's impossible with ETH. Every time someone do a transaction, it's going to cost you $2, but for Soul, it's going to be like a few cents. And that changes like the perspective of how are we going to build and move towards the scalability of our carnival and our product. So, yeah, I mean, it's been a crazy journey so far, but happy to be part of the Soul, the Soul team so far. Yeah.
Very nice. Final question for Adam. Look, OpenSea also situated at a very eventful juncture for the company. OpenSea 2.0 coming, rumors of a token as well, all of that. A lot of scrutiny, right? A lot of public scrutiny. It seems like almost any move you make, there's always going to be, there's going to be criticism and praise from all sides. Like, from your perspective, what does success look like for OpenSea in its next chapter?
It's a great question. And also, for anyone who sends mean tweets and tags OpenSea, I have to read those all day and respond to them. So please be nicer. No, I'm just teasing. You guys, say what you want. It's all good. I think success for us in this new chapter really comes down to, like, are we delivering on what our users are asking us for? And it sounds super basic, and it sounds super just straightforward. It's actually quite difficult. In an earlier answer, I talked about how we have so many different segments of users. We have hardcore on-chain generative art maxis who are like, we want these tools on OpenSea. You also have the flippers and the traders who represent a significant portion of revenue for the company. You also have like the Web3 noobs who are just coming to OpenSea because they've heard about NFTs and they kind of want a trusted place to go, but they see a front page of like all these crazy flashing things and they don't know what to do, so they leave. We have, all of these different segments of users. And so I think when I think about success for OpenSea, at least, it's building tools, features, products, etc., for the people that use us and that meet their needs. It's a tall order for sure, but with the new product, as I've sort of alluded to, we're starting to make real ground on that. And I think everyone, once you're able to go in, if you haven't already been in, is going to see that. And when it comes to like having certain views, so like a collector view versus a pro view, or having different layouts, or having, be able to denominate things in different ways, or doing cross-chain swaps, or like whatever it is that you want to do in Web3 to interact with the ecosystem, I want OpenSea to have that and present it in a way that makes sense for your habits and your usage. That, to me, is what success would look like.
There it is. We are at time. Everyone give it up for all of our amazing panelists.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.